Well, who seems to have the media totally on their side, working for their agenda, covering up for their corruption and hypocrisy? I mean, come on. And Trump's the fascist?
Never in history has a fascist not had the media. Right? What does that look like? What if Hillary would have been in office, or what if Biden and Harris get in office? What would a fascist do? I know Trump is the fascist, right? That's what they keep saying. But let's look at like the definition of what a fascist is and what they would actually be doing right now if they were actually fascist, right? So COVID breaks out, right? This is one of the reasons people on the right love Trump too. That is a perfect opportunity for a fascist leader to promise all the security and safety that he wants to provide, to make certain that you're okay. But to do so, I'm going to have to expand the government.
We'll need all the power.
We'll need all the power so that we can make sure that you're secure and you're safe. Security and safety. Right? And so that would be exactly what a fascist would do. What has Trump done? He has not expanded the government, which has been huge. What would Hillary have done? Cue Dustin, because I know you love this one.
Well, if you look at what I think, get me going on this. If you look at even the way they've tried to tempt Trump with this power, and he's flirted with it just to mess with him, but they gave him what was it, the Defense Authorization Act or whatever that is, where he could basically assume control of the private sector and force them to produce certain things. And they were like, really, you ought to do that, Trump, you ought to, and almost pressuring him and criticizing him for not doing more of it. But he really did very little. The few meaningful things that seemed to happen was retooling some of the lost auto sector to make ventilators. Hey, there was a ventilator shortage, they said. Well, now we're the world's leading producer of ventilators, and they're stockpiling, and we're exporting them because we didn't really need them. But same thing with medicines in that Kodak, the former camera maker from the 80s, I guess still existed, but were almost out of business, and now they're being retooled to become a pharmaceutical company. And so that was an example of saving almost lost industry and refocusing them to make something useful. Yeah. So there's an expression of how that could be used. But if you take all that power and authority and it could be an opportunity, like you're saying, to bring that under
Biden and
government
Harris,
power
something very
and control.
Simple, and this is very simple, that could extrapolate into something extremely dangerous. But they've continuously said we ought to make a mask mandate from the federal level, right? I mean, this is a simple example, but you need to understand what kind of precedent is that setting. And that's what they're all about. They're not about a mask mandate. They're about setting precedent. They're about changing the way that we think, right? So if you can tell people from a federal level, and you may go, well, it would be good for our country if, and you may be this person, like it would be better for our country and we'd be safer, and we don't believe this, but if you do believe this way, it would be safer for all of us if they would just mandate masks. But you need to stop. You need to pause and you need to back up and go, but if they can mandate masks, what else could they mandate one day? Right? And when you give that kind of power over, like there is a sense of responsibility and freedom. And what you're doing is you're giving up freedom because you don't want to be responsible yourself. But once you give that freedom up, then they control what is mandated from the top, and you will listen at that point. You will do what they say. So we need to pause and reflect before we emotionally jump in and go, yeah, mandate those masks. What have we just done? All right, what have we just done when we say something like that? So I think that is extremely important. So who has been for this government overreach during COVID? Well, I would say the Biden-Harris administration in many ways have been for that, right? So fascist, not fascist. Okay, let's move on.
Well, and I mean, just a couple of other quick examples, though. I mean, with everything that broke out in the summer around the racial issues and the protests / riots that were happening, and I would say even a lot of that was instigated so that Trump administration would send in the military, and you would have some awesome images for propaganda to see the military tanks rolling in, Humvees, military troops, squaring off against citizens.
They're like, why is he not going in? This is not the plan.
So he didn't do that. Instead, he put it back on the governors and the local authorities, which is what a federalist approach would do. They would give the rights and the responsibilities are with the states and more local governments. If you can't deal with it, then, hey, we're here to help you. Just ask. And you see the places that asked, and the federal government moved in quickly and dealt with the situation. And you see the places who didn't ask out of pride and in politics.
I think they didn't ask out of just confusion, because the plan was he was going to come in authoritatively, right? Like he was going to do this, and now that he didn't, it's like, oh, what do we do now? Somebody give me some direction here, because what he was supposed to do, he didn't do, and I don't know what to say at my next news conference.
I'm sure in some of those blue states, they assumed that the military was going to come rolling in quickly, and
they already had prepared talking points for when it happened, and then when it didn't happen, they're like, I don't know what to talk about.
Trump the dictator, Trump the fascist. But in all these things, I mean, you see a potential power grab, even though they didn't have power in this moment, because that'd have been what was really scary, is that if Hillary would have been president.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to get the conspiracy theorist in me really going, I would say that all of this virus stuff was about the election from the start, and they were, even with a Hillary coming in, because if we were approaching this election with a Hillary president, if you think the country is hot right now and divided, and man, we would be going through it for sure. It might have already popped off and been violent before now. And so the COVID thing was to provide cover for major government overreach, and new policy direction, and assuming government control.
And we keep saying, because that didn't happen, if Biden and Harris take this election and they take the Senate, you are going to see a rapid pushing through of these policies, because they recognize that what they thought was going to happen, which was guaranteed 2016 election after Obama crushed Romney, who was left, right? There was no way they could do exactly what they did to Romney, which was paint him out to be a racist bigot, the most milquetoast candidate in all of history. They could do that to anybody that was downstream from him. So Clinton had it wrapped up. So now that they know it wasn't as wrapped up as they thought, if you don't think they're going to try to push through stuff in 2020 if they win this, they are going to cram it down our throats.
What would be another thing that a fascist regime would need to do? I mean, a big part of their playbook. What would they need to control and have and use to influence and persuade the population? They'd have to have quite the propaganda apparatus. Well, who seems to have the media totally on their side, working for their agenda, covering up for their corruption and hypocrisy? I mean, come on. And Trump's the fascist.
Never in history has a fascist not had the media for propaganda.
You cannot come into fascist power without the media.
And everything that they say, I always say this to people too, everything that they say about Trump, they're actually deflecting, and they're saying it about him first, so that when he says it back to them, they're like, see, he's just calling us the same name we called him. It is who they are. They call Trump a fascist because they are fascist. They call Trump a racist because they have been the party of racism. They call Trump the things that they do because it is inherently who they are. And they're trying to point to him before he can actually point to them, because it is their last-ditch effort to paint him out to be who they need him to be so he doesn't win re-election.
Because when he does come tomorrow, then it's really going to hit the fan. And the things, and this is where it might even get more crucial, because some of the things that we might see in the coming period in the next 4 years, as far as
election fraud, that's coming, I can promise you.
Well, and in that, our government will have to take a strong stand in order to maintain order in society, because there's going to be those voices who are trying to stir the pot by saying, oh, it's scandalous, and oh, there's fraud, oh, there's this and that, and it's Trump's fault. You know, the same form or tactic of projection, blame him, point at him and his administration for the very things that they've been trying to use in their particular strategies. But now, when the hammer of justice starts coming down on some of these corrupt politicians, and they're going to be crying foul even more than they have, and using these labels and making these claims that, he's a fascist dictator trying to take out his political rivals, et cetera, et cetera. But just think long and hard. Perhaps a fascist dictator would do that. But let's consider who's been trying to do that since someone else declared candidacy for president, became president, been trying to undermine and take him out of office, get rid of their political rival because they were afraid that real justice was coming for them. And so, but that was based on a lot of media spin and hype and anonymous sources or speculation, a bunch of conspiracies that never amounted to fact, whereas we've had other facts emerge over the last 3-4 years about where the real agenda is, who the real corrupt people are, the real twisted, sick, perverse lifestyles they lead, and that's going to come out even more. And let's just follow the real proof. Let's use our minds, not as a bunch of sheep being led to the slaughter, but as a nation of citizens who are actively engaged in preserving our union and our quality of life and future generations. And let's engage that and think and just side with the forces that are aligned with those same things, preserving our way of life versus some radical change into, and trying to use socialist utopia to lead us in that direction.
Well, and all you have to do really, and again, this goes back to what we're talking about. There's a reason that they implement the strategy of revisionist history, right? Because history bears all this out. There's nothing new under the sun. If you go back through societies in history, what they're implementing has always led to an oppressed people. Always. The republic that we have has never truly existed for the people, by the people. It's never existed. And so if you want to preserve what is good and preserve the freedom that we have, you have to preserve the old values that we've been able to build them on. These new values are not new. These are not new values. They have been used in the past, and it has never worked.
Yeah, they lead to ruin. They always lead to ruin.
Always. And you have to have painted a revisionist history from the top to be able to get a citizenry to accept these values. And that's what I was talking about, us being isolated has hindered us in this way, because we are truly ignorant of history. We are. We know American history. Well, no, we don't even know American history anymore, right? They've painted it out. But the fact that we don't know American history, we surely don't know history beyond American history anymore. Like, we are just fools when it comes to this. And all you got to do is turn on social media and go watch. I mean, we are absolutely ignorant to these things, which is causing us to be willing to go down this path that we think is new and going to lead to, like you said, this utopia. And anybody that's educated goes, no, it's going to be pretty much terrible. Like, it's going to be awful. Just keep going and you'll find out.